Evening, everyone. Welcome to our May 14th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. Would you please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. That's okay.
Hey, you got it. Lord. You in far enough? Yeah. I want to try.
Nicole, please.
Chairman John Curry.
Here.
Paul Cheverdini.
Here.
Vicky Gannon.
Here.
Jack Mattis.
Here.
Bruce Prince.
Here.
Anthony Sutton.
Here.
Christopher Berto.
Here.
Thank you. First on our agenda is the minutes from April 9th, 2025. I didn't see any corrections or additions, so I make a motion we approve the minutes as they were presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is our project review for 23 and 25 Hilltop Road. It's an application for steep slopes protection, wetland and watercourse protection, stormwater management, and erosion and sediment control, and tree removal permits. Evening. Thank you for the lovely walk up the hill. Thought we should have had scepters with it. Yes, we.
I got my steps in.
Next time we got to do it during turkey season, right?
Yeah.
So carrying water up the hill and stuff like that. Yeah.
He didn't tell you that ahead of time, did he?
Yeah. Added service. Hello everyone. My name is Sean Peters. Here with H2M Architects and Engineers on behalf of Martin Parenti, the applicant. So I just wanted to give the board an overview of some of the changes, the more changes we've made to the plans since the last appearance. And then if there's any questions or anything else you'd like me to touch on, I can. The last time we were here, one of the considerations that came up that the board was looking for was a wetland mitigation plan. I know the board felt like that was something that was lacking from our application, so we have considered that. I'd like to thank Engineer Robbins and Mr. Barnhart from the Open Space Committee because we were able to meet with both of them to kind of go over some of their concerns and hear some of their considerations for the site. So what I will mention about the site is that some of the options for wetland mitigation was somewhat limited on the site because it is so forested. We can't really do a one-to-one, wetland planting because we'd have to disturb more area just to replant wetland species. So obviously that's something we're looking to avoid. The other point being that because there's such a mature tree canopy here, the plant species that we planted here had to be selective, something that would thrive in a shady to partially shady area. So at the suggestion of the Open Space Committee, the plant species that we incorporated here are off the New York State DEC's wetland list. So that's for species that are predominantly found in wetland areas native to this site and local sites like this, and then upland areas of wetlands. So the project within the wetland buffer is removing 22 trees. We're proposing 8 new trees and 40 shrubs and grasses. The reason why you're not seeing more trees is because, as I mentioned, there's a fairly mature tree canopy. So, we're willing to plant more trees, but, our opinion is that they wouldn't thrive too well given the existing tree canopy. So where you see trees located are in areas that we felt like we had a little bit more direct sunlight and we're able to plant trees that would thrive in this environment. So in addition to the wetland planting that was done, we're also proposing some slope stabilization. So I know a number of you were out on site a few weekends ago. And the first thing when you come down that stream crossing and you look up at that hill, you see that it almost looks like a gully, right? You see all the washed out slopes. It's very steep. There's a lot of exposed rock there, which is indicators that there's a lot of sediment coming down that hill at an increased velocity. So what we're looking to do is at the foot of that slope, is stabilize the area. And that would serve two benefits. Number one, it would slow down velocities of flows entering the stream, preventing erosion within the stream. And then it would also prevent sediment from being transported from that hill down into the stream. So that's what we're proposing for wetland mitigation. The other thing that came up during the meeting, one of the members of your board brought up the fact that there needed to be a culvert crossing or some better means of conveyance for the stormwater flows down to the proposed practices. So we did incorporate in this area, there's a new culvert crossing proposed. We're also incorporating a small retention pond, which will take flows as they come down that hill, slow them down, and then carry them into the culvert crossing. And then it's hard to tell on this scale, but all the swales were upsized to confirm conveyance for the peak storm events for the site. And we looked at the areas which would have the minimum slope of 1% and made sure that they were still able to convey that flow, and also incorporated check dams throughout to slow down those velocities. Two of the other items I wanted to mention, one of them being the existing AT&T easement. This is something that came up in both your engineer and open spaces letters. There was some concern about that easement and whether or not the utility would have concern with us developing and paving that road in that area, because there is a small pocket of it that passes through that AT&T easement. We were able to, following our submission to the board, I was able to go on the county website and download a copy of the existing easement that's on file, which I can give to you in the language in that. But it's our opinion that this language reads that this activity is permissible given that the utility is notified and signs off on it. So we contacted AT&T, a lot of back and forth phone calls, and eventually found out that this is now owned by Verizon. So we're contacting Verizon and trying to get something in writing from them. But as soon as we have something in writing, we'll provide it to this board. The other item that came up on your site walk and also in the comment letters we received was the existing trail. That trail utilizes the existing stream crossing, which we're now proposing this residential driveway on. We understand the benefit that this stream crossing provides both to the public and to the environment. Obviously, if we had to add in an additional stream crossing, it'd be impactful to the environment in that area. So in discussing with Mr. Parenti, what we're proposing to do is allow the continued use of that crossing for the public benefit. And the thought is that we'd incorporate some signage to direct people using the trail and accessing the park, which way to go, maybe incorporate a map in that area. And then further up the driveway, perhaps add some signs that just indicate that in that direction is private property. And we think that's agreeable and, allows for the continued benefit for the public of that crossing. So those are the main items that I want to touch on. If the board has any questions or wants me to go over anything, let me know.
Dave and Steve?
Could you just quickly go through? I know the Open Space Committee had some other comments regarding the EAF, particularly archaeology and species. I think you provided a response. Can you just summarize that for the board?
Yes, so that is something that was discussed when I met with Michael. The archaeological site came up as a check on the EAF mapper. That's an automatic check that comes up. If you follow through on the New York State DEC's website, they provide additional steps to be done once that check comes up on the mapper. So we checked the CRISP mapper, which is the Cultural Resources Mapper, which was provided in our resubmission, and there's no hits on this site for archaeological impact. We did also discuss with Michael that if there was any records for this site as part of the previously approved subdivision that indicated there was an archaeological presence on the site, that it was something that we would want to review. He did respond to me and say that he didn't find anything. So in our opinion, there's no evidence of archaeological impacts on this site. And if there was something, then, you know, we would want to be made aware of that. But given that this is a type 2 action, that there's nothing coming up on the mapper, we felt that what we've done is sufficient. And then similarly with the wildlife, again, we looked at the environmental mapper from the DEC, and there's no threatened or endangered species for this site. So I understand that it's a heavily forested site and there could be species there, but given that there's nothing on the mapper and that this is, again, a type 2 action, we felt like there wasn't additional studies necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the DEC's role in wetland permitting? Do you need a DEC permit here as well? And
Yes, there is a DEC permit necessary. We submitted an application shortly before our first appearance before this board. We followed up with DEC staff. I understand that, you know, they have a lot of applications coming in, especially with wetland regulations changing within the last year. That's increasing, you know, the number of items that they're reviewing. I followed up. I know they have our submission and they're reviewing it, but I have not received any comments yet on that. But obviously, you know, I would assume that a condition of your approval would be obtaining that wetland.
yeah, I think my concern would be if they have comments that substantially change the scope of what you're doing. If this board moves too quickly, you might end up back before the board for an amended approval, and we would just have to make sure that that process makes sense. In terms of the some of the environmental impacts and especially the species of concern that Open Space Committee raised, how would you foresee the phasing of this project and the timing of construction work? Is there an opportunity to do work in sensitive areas outside of what might be typically restricted work seasons, you know, especially for bats for tree removal and you know, June being a month of a lot of turtle activity? If we can avoid disturbance in areas in those periods of time, I think given the fact that you are a type 2 action, but Open Space Committee has these concerns, is there an accommodation there that makes sense for the project? I don't know that that's an answer that we need now, but I think that's something that you might consider.
No, and I do agree. And I think there's some flexibility with the phasing to work around those species, if and when they're identified. Again, you know, as part of the DEC's review, they do also now take into consideration any environmental species, and we'll comment on it. We just had a permit that we obtained for a wetland project in Lewisboro, and there was bats and bog turtles on the sites, and those both had appropriate mitigation measures assigned to them. So if there is something that the DEC is looking for us to do, we would incorporate those mitigation measures into our design. As far as phasing, I can quickly do like a high level of, you know, what we're proposing right now. So let me just change.
You might as well
Use the,
pull it over.
use the
Yeah.
pointer,
Flip it over.
Yeah.
That mic.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't.
pointer,
It'll,
it's right underneath the
The point.
plan.
If that's helpful.
Okay, great.
this generation.
Thank you very much. I don't think it's one of these.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm just going to go high level over the phasing plan. I think one of the concerns that members of the board might have raised, I know I spoke to Martin about this, was trying to limit the amount of areas that are disturbed at once and kind of phase this in a way where we can stabilize areas as soon as possible, especially because there's, you know, we noted in our initial presentation that there's a large number of steep slopes on the site. So what you're seeing here is this heavily dashed line here is what we're calling our phase 1 work limits. So what we'd like to do in that area essentially is, you know, as we start the project, immediately put in silt fencing, construct the temporary sediment trap in this area. And then as we work our way up and clear out for the roadway, as the roadway is cleared out and we're grading, we're also going to be establishing those conveyance swales to make sure that any runoff from those disturbed areas where activity is going on is being directed towards the sediment trap. As that project area progresses, those areas would be stabilized, and then following stabilization of this area and installation of the subbase to stabilize the roadway, so you're not having an open dirt road that's getting rutting and then tracking onto these roads. Following the stabilization and subbase installation on these areas, then we move into the second phase, which would involve the installation of the 2 residential dwellings and any grading associated with that, as well as the installation of the on-site septic systems and wells. And this would allow the larger area of disturbance to be stabilized before moving on to these other areas, which development might take a little bit longer on, with construction of the building, but those first areas would have been stabilized by then. Following the completion of work in these areas and stabilization, this sediment trap would be converted over to the permanent stormwater practice that you saw proposed on the previous page. And that would allow for, as a high level, there's more detail on the plans, but as a high level phasing of this site. But to your engineer's point on this, I think there is some flexibility. Let's say, this area is where we would see, if there was bog turtles, you'd see the most impact in this area along the stream, right? So we look to phase that work in a time or a season that, would be less impactful to bog turtles. In these areas where we're doing heavy tree clearing, we look to potentially, if there was bats on the site, perform tree clearing outside of those windows that are restricted. So I think that's the intent and the flexibility with the phasing plan. If we do have comments from the DEC that warrant changes, I think those can be made. But I think overall, this design provides, sufficient detail as to a path forward for phasing this site while also mitigating impacts.
So the remainder of our technical comments were substantially addressed. The remainder of our comments were relatively minor. We had a couple of items where we were looking for some additional clarification or some additional information is forthcoming for a couple of our questions. But I appreciate that the applicant has taken the feedback of the board and of other professionals and has made some adjustments and clarifications and provided some additional information on their plans. This is a tricky site, as we and it needs an appropriate measure of care as this project is developed. I think the question for the board is, or one of the questions for the board in terms of process is how you want to handle hearing. That is the next step to be scheduled, or if you want to await DEC comments, or schedule a public hearing and potentially hold it open pending DEC comments. I think is another option available to the board. But I think that from our review, the wetland mitigation is appropriate for this site. Phasing of construction would be a good idea regardless of whether DEC finds anything, just given the fact that we're working within a wetland buffer in a sensitive site. And I think we also need some clarification on the trail access and the easement is the other major item that obviously the applicant is waiting for information from others.
Board member questions or comments?
I have a question regarding the trail. You referred to as a public trail. Do we know whose trail it belongs to? Who set that up?
I believe it's just in there. I don't
know. Gotta come up to the microphone.
Oh, Mike, Martin, if you want to say something.
Oh. No,
So Martin's understanding, the property owner, his understanding is that trail has always existed there as far as his recollection. I know it's access to Anglefly Preserve, but any other records on that, I'm not sure if that would be on file with the previous subdivision, but.
So that's not an Anglefly built trail, is that as far as we know?
I would not be aware of whether or not it's part of Anglefly doesn't the actual preserve is, it was mentioned in the open space comment letter, but
Right.
the Anglefly Preserve is 700 feet away from the closest point on the property line. But I believe the way open space looks at it is that even that DEC property that is adjacent to ours is incorporated within that preserve. But whether or not, to your point, that means that that trail is, was installed by the DEC or was installed as part of Anglefly, we aren't aware of that.
And then from the town's perspective, we don't have any, like, no one's claimed it. Said this is part of, what I'm getting at is this just a space that residents have just walked on and it became a trail de facto? Or is it a posted trail? Is it documented somewhere?
I would have, this is Mike Toohey from Abrams Fensterman, counsel to the planning board. We would have to look back to where, because this was originally Wiener World, if I'm correct.
Yes,
We have to look back to the original subdivision to see whether or not they granted an easement for an access trail
Got it.
to the preserve. It very well could have just been that it was never developed and no one really went up there and people just started using it and making their way through it.
Right.
Then there's a greater question of whether or not there's some prescription by right to continue to use it. But I would have to look into that to determine if that's a factor.
Thank you.
I didn't notice any signage on the site walk, but there are crude trail markings that somebody obviously put there.
It's happened many times before. You could probably drive through New York State, especially this area, and find hundreds, if not thousands, of trails that were just made over time and people just kept using them and they just became established by use.
I think in the bigger picture, I think, we're not looking to take away any public benefit or access to the park as part of this project. I think it's a good question as to whose trail that is to maintain. And, maybe that needs to be looked into. But, again, we're not looking to limit access to that trail for public benefit.
Yeah, and from my perspective, if it's not a declared trail and it's just, because we've seen that, right? Just fake land and we don't really enforce no trespassing and people just tend to use it. And, from my personal perspective, I wouldn't have a problem with it being decommissioned because it's your land now and you've got a use for it. But I would have a problem with it if it was a sanctioned trail, but or even if AT&T set that up as a public benefit or something like that. So I just wanted a little history behind it, so that I can in good faith know that we've covered everyone, you as well as the general,
I agree.
Excuse me, can you point out the easement? Is that the blue line?
Yeah, sure. No, that blue line is the 100-foot offset for the wetland limit, which is the green line. The easement is a dashed line. It's a 20-foot wide dashed line that runs. You see this bold line here? It runs parallel to that bold line along the property line here. So where we're installing the driveway, a very small sliver of where the new driveway is crosses over into that easement, and we can't move the driveway over because we'd be further into the wetland and into the stream. But again, I think as that gets worked out and resolved with Verizon, I don't foresee it being an issue.
They don't have
'cause-
plans for that, but do they have any plans for that easement? Or are you gonna find that out?
All I was able to obtain, besides the original subdivision plat, was a document regarding the existing easement, which I can pass on.
Thank you.
But I believe it's the third or fourth paragraph down. There's some discussion of the rights of the property owner to access and maintain access that was established for those two residential homes, but it does condition it on, approval from the utility, to avoid any impacts to the utility.
and there's a fiber optic that runs in that easement, right? Is that what it is for?
That's our understanding, yes.
Yeah, that's what the signage was.
Yeah. So it appears it was owned by the New York Telephone Company. And then there must have been some acquisition, maybe by AT&T, and then sold to Verizon that I'm not sure about, but it was indicated as an AT&T easement in the survey. And according to AT&T, it belongs to Verizon. Or sort of.
Yeah, that was in the 80s, right? They broke up Ma Bell.
End of the late 80s, yeah, I think.
Got
So would an easement
correctly?
travel from owner to owner? Like if it would start out with AT&T and then went to Verizon, the easement would continue with that. Is that correct?
Continues to bind the land, correct?
Okay.
Pursuant to the terms of the easement, I'm reading this for the first time.
Yeah.
There may be some
But I would-
restrictions, but if it's been transferred, signed through several companies, I'm assuming it's.
That's what I was,
in it.
yeah. Any other board member comments or questions?
I had a quick question. What is the duration of time that you envisage it would take for that first phase construction?
Martin, do you
Term-
want to come up and speak to that in terms of?
Phase, I believe, would be the initial cutting of everything, stabilization. I would say 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks. To get the driveway that we walked all the way to the top. get Stoned out, swales, detention area, complete.
So it wouldn't be paved at that point. What we're looking to do is just get it stabilized as soon as possible. And then once all the other improvements are done, we'll come back and do a final paving.
Mhm.
So, Steve and board members, you feel is it too early to schedule a public hearing?
No, I would, I'll float a motion to open a public hearing with the intent to leave it open until the DEC provides their comments and the public has time to digest those comments.
Yep. Is there a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye,
Thank you. Oh, wait, we'll schedule a public hearing for the next meeting.
yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And this.
Meeting is June 11th. June 11th.
Thank you.
Sure. And for the record, the next meeting is June 11th.
Yeah. I can, that's, yeah, thank you. Then I can read on the computer and I can Zoom.
Next on our agenda is 99 Tomahawk Street. It's an application for wetland and water course protection and stormwater management and erosion and sediment control. The project, to bring up to speed, we talked about this before, it's removal of an existing bridge and replace it with a new culvert and temporary access road to serve an existing house. It's located at 99 Tomahawk Street in R40 zone.
So on this application, Chairman, we'd had some coordination and discussion with the applicant's engineer. I know that they were possibly planning to attend via Zoom, but I don't know that there is, I don't know, A, if they are, but also B, any new information that they can provide. I'm happy to provide the board with the update as I have it.
We are on the call and there's no new information, so.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And correct me if I misstate this. You have applied to the DEC for jurisdictional determination for the work in the stream on this particular property. And as a matter of background, this is an application to do some disturbance in the stream bank itself in order to install some piping, a culvert pipe, instead of the bridge that crosses it, because the bridge right now is in poor repair. So the applicant would like to remove the bridge and replace it with a simpler culvert crossing. We've done the engineering review with the applicant on the size of that culvert, find it to be appropriate. Because this is a wetland permit, the board does need to schedule a public hearing. And I think the same general process that we just discussed with the last applicant is appropriate. The board should consider whether it's appropriate to schedule a public hearing and then see if DEC also comments, but we can keep our process parallel.
Any other questions? If not, Chris, why don't you just reiterate your same motion?
So I will float another motion to open a public hearing in regards to this application with the intent to leave it open until we receive comments from the DEC.
And that will also be at our next meeting,
Be to
June 11th.
Schedule a public hearing.
Schedule a public hearing, right?
What did I say?
For a second?
Open.
Open, no.
Schedule.
Second.
Jack seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, 3 Catherine Place. It's an application for wetland and watercourse protection and stormwater management and erosion and sediment control. The project would like to put in an in-ground pool, patio, and rain garden. And for the record, it's at 3 Catherine Place, and it's in an R80 zone.
Good evening.
Evening.
Nice to see you all again. Andy Chung, AC Engineering, just is a quick project. So 3 Catherine Place, about 1.98 acres, right next to, pretty close to the reservoir. The homeowner wants to install an in-ground pool, about 24 by 30 feet, 408 square foot of patio around it. So basically, there is an existing town water course that runs north to south. And if you do 100-foot offset of that, the work that we're proposing is within that 100-foot setback. The septic is located just to the west of that 100-foot setback. So we're looking for approval for a water course permit and wetland. So I looked at the environmental mapper from DEC. It does not state that it is a DEC wetland, but I went ahead and I completed the jurisdictional determination just in case. Yeah, so that's where we're at.
I have no comments.
Can you describe for the board, the various site features and discuss the thought process behind the locations? I think at first glance, I know that you spoke with the town engineering technician, Mr. Wolfel, about this project as well.
Yeah.
And discussed or kind of worked through with him on via that discussion different alternative layouts and why they may or may not be suitable.
Right. Sorry, I also forgot to talk about the stormwater aspect of this project. So the location of the pool and the patio is the chosen location is based on the location of the existing septic tank, and where the leach lines are. So as per the Board of Health regulations, we need it to be 30 feet away from closest leach line. So by drawing a 30-foot radius, the edge of the pool is the farthest away that the closest it can be to the septic. So the orientation and the placement of the pool and patio is based on the location of the septic system. The rest of the property is wooded. There's no intent for the homeowner to cut down any trees, remove any vegetation. They're going to remain everything as is. So basically, the location of the pool and patio is the flattest area of the entire property. Easy for someone to get in, do their construction, get out with very minimal disturbance. The stormwater aspect of it, basically a 2-inch trench drain around the patio collecting stormwater, and then that's going to be routed into a catch basin as a clean out point, and then from the catch basin out to a small rain garden just at the downhill side. I did receive comments from the Open Space Committee that concern about using a catch basin. Our use of the catch basin is simply just as a clean out point. It doesn't need to be there. If it's a concern with the catch basin, we could pipe it directly into the rain garden. And they had a question on the plant species and the spacings on sheet 4 of my plans. I have 5 viburnum and 5 dogwood plants spaced 2 to 3 feet apart, and I have that shown in my site plan where those plantings are going.
The dark brown rectangle, which I believe is a shed.
Yes, so there's an existing shed on the property. It's just going to be shifted over about 10 feet just to have enough room for that pool to sit there. And again, that whole area is literally the flattest part property other than the area where the septic is.
Is the area of the existing shed kind of the lighter rectangle, similar shape that kind of is in that bottom right-hand corner of the pool area?
Correct. So this is the relocated shed. The existing shed is about right here.
Was there any consideration to other locations for that shed to kind of move it away from the water course? That's kind of your tightest point to the water course right there.
Correct. This is the closest to the flattest part of the property before it drops down to the water course.
But a location on the short side of the pool
Sort of
on the
down-
back.
Down closer toward the round
Yeah.
circle.
No, I was looking the
Okay.
other direction, Vicky. Yeah, closer. Yeah, in that area. What we're trying to do obviously is the entirety of the, and maybe you can trace the location of the wetland buffer line.
Well, this is the 100-foot buffer right here.
So we are, all of this proposed work is within the wetland buffer and just looking to talk through if there are any site plan adjustments that can at least preserve what separation we can to the water course. Obviously, it's a steep slope through that area, but
Right, this is the beginning of the slope
sure.
right here, and it pitches down towards this water
To
course.
check to where he was just gesturing to the top part.
I was
Well-
thinking about the short side of the pool farthest from the driveway. Nope.
Other side, up, like here.
Yes, yes.
Right there.
Yes.
Well, this whole area here is all wooded.
Okay.
So
So it would involve the trade-off is we'd have tree removals in that area. So we have essentially a bigger impact by moving it there as opposed to here, even though it appears that this would be a more impactful location because of its proximity to the stream.
Correct. The cleared area is literally from this side of the house up around this way. And it comes like this.
The location of the stormwater basin, is there a reason that that location was chosen versus somewhere again that would involve less disturbance in the buffer?
So there is, it's wooded, but it's not to the point where you can't get a 4-inch pipe through there and to excavate. This area is actually cleared already.
Okay.
So I basically just chose the area that had the least amount of impact on the site.
I think that's important context because in first blush, you look at this and say, there's a lot more disturbance here than is needed. But what you're saying is that you have put that disturbance where it is least impactful and you're taking advantage of the existing cleared areas to the extent possible.
Correct. The only area right here, the homeowner has planted some ornamental bushes that they would just remove. But the footprint of the patio, the pool, the piping for the rain garden itself, there wouldn't be any tree removal necessary.
Because we are doing this work and we're adding impervious area within the wetland buffer, obviously you're handling the stormwater aspect of it. But is there any additional mitigation proposed for the additional, for the disturbance in the buffer and the additional impervious area?
I did not include additional mitigation measures.
What we've seen on some past projects, one earlier tonight as well, looking at what are some of the existing encumbrances on the wetland buffer. You actually have driveway and house that are impervious surface that are all within the wetland buffer currently. I don't know how the stormwater is handled from those, but is there some aspect of that existing impervious surface that can be mitigated? Or, are there other mitigation measures, removal of invasive species or other means that could serve the intent of implying with the town code, which does request mitigation for wetland buffer disturbance beyond just the basics of treating the stormwater, which you'd have to do anyway.
Right. Right. So we could take the square footage of the patio, well, the existing roof leaders of the house, I think, go into existing dry wells in the front yard. That's the side yard. We could take a look at taking the square footage and possibly including additional wetland type plantings along the bank of the water course.
Yeah, and I think you also mentioned that there are some steep areas through that wetland buffer. I don't know if there's erosion or stream bank stabilization that could also be something you could consider. Obviously, we want to find the right mitigation for the site.
Right. There is some erosion that I've visually saw more downstream from but it would be difficult to get in there. So
May not be the right fit.
right, we're probably not going to be touching any of that. But if additional mitigation plantings were to be done, it would probably be along this area here.
I think that we'd want to see that proposal.
Okay.
Board member comments or questions?
How far off the stream is that shed when it's going to be repositioned to?
Well, from the top of the berm down to the actual water course itself, it's probably 25 feet, 30 feet.
I'm very familiar with the site. It's kind of in a bowl. And there's also, I believe, a pull-off for an additional parking to the right side of the current garage. Almost where, yeah, I do know that it's significantly lower than the elevation of the road in front of the house. I'm just wondering if any currently existing mitigation measures for runoff are going to be compromised by the construction.
There's the existing house,
Yeah,
the plantings, there's a little, yes, so
The
the
garage-
driveway kind of comes like this.
yeah, and it has a
Yes,
loop around there.
correct.
So as I said, it's much lower than the roadway
Mhm.
in terms of the water, and I guess currently most of that water winds up into that stream. You know, will any of that be compromised by this construction?
Well, we're away from the driveway. So our construction, so the end of, so the garage is here, the end of the driveway is about right here. So our construction is really in this area.
Okay.
So no, I don't, so I don't, we're not, well, whatever additional stormwater is being generated from the patio is going directly into the rain garden.
Will you have any run on from the driveway to the pool patio area?
It's not a really steep slope. It's the right immediately after the driveway, there is a grass area. It's well vegetated. It's not,
But the pool patio is physically lower than the driveway?
no, it's going to be the same elevation. Yeah, from the end of the driveway down to about right here, it's 1.5%, 2% slope. It's literally the flattest spot of the property.
And what kind of soil is it there?
Woodbridge loam, Paxton fine sandy loams.
Are you guys thinking like a French drain at the end of the driveway? Or something like that? I mean, it's not really part of the disturbance area. That's pre-existing. Like, I'm just trying to understand Tony's point to the driveway and the runoff into the stream. I mean, if it's already an existing issue, we might suggest some mitigation for it, but if it's not, if it's only.
Well, if it's going to be at the same level as the existing driveway or higher, the pool, then I would guess that it's not going to compromise any of that.
Yeah,
Whatever course it's taken now, it'll
stay that way. It should stay that way, right?
Yeah, whatever the existing grade is at that location, that's the same elevation as what the patio will be.
Steve, do you think we're ready for a site walk? I mean, to do.
I would defer to the board. Obviously, some board members have knowledge of the site if it's.
I grew up 2 houses away.
You know, like,
I mean, do you think a site visit is helpful to understand the context of the application?
My questions are answered. I don't know that.
No, okay.
I'm not feeling it for a pool and patio. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, the whole thing, no matter what, is gonna be in the buffer, right?
Yeah,
And we're doing our best to.
and he's
try to
mitigating,
Mitigate
right?
disturbance.
Yeah.
What are we gonna, they're not gonna flip it on the left side of the
Right.
house. So, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think
Yep,
this
that's fine.
we could waive personally, but you know,
I agree.
Okay, so I would suggest just address couple of his comments, come back with slight revisions, is fair to say?
Okay.
And at that time, once the board is satisfied that the wetland mitigation is appropriate, the next step would be to schedule a public hearing. Since
Correct.
Yep.
Okay,
Could I ask that after I do my additional revisions to send them directly to Steve, you, and then instead of having to come back to present planting plan?
So we are, as always, happy to meet with applicants to discuss their project and provide input for an official submittal to the board. I think the next step is an official submittal to the board that that describes the wetland mitigation. But certainly if there's technical back and forth, I can't speak for the board, but I can provide technical input between now and then. I'm happy to do so.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. Next on our application is Canada Realty 295 100. It's just a site plan amendment. For the record, Steve Wolf and I actually went down and visited his site a while back, just to let the board know. As everything this applicant does, it looks very nice in the back.
Much.
The neighbors have to be very happy with what you just, with the berm alone.
Hope so. We think it was an enhancement. You know, we had the opportunity. We had some great soils on there, as you know. We had some nice topsoil, and rather than sell it, we figured we'd create an extra protection for the residential tenant in the back. And we just put a little bit of a berm with some evergreens. And this is in addition to the landscape plan that was approved. It's not a
Right.
substitution. We made every effort to make sure there was no disturbance in any of the runoff or the water. And we don't think that it's going to be any infringement on anything.
Dave and Steve, you have any comments? I mean, this is, in my opinion, it's just kind of a minor change. Only reason it came before us because it was a change to the site plan that we had approved.
It was a change in the site plan, but in Steve Wolfel, during his site reviews, talked to the applicant and he reviewed it and he thought that the change wasn't a minor field change.
No, it was
It
not.
actually required coming back to your board to have it recognized as a site plan amendment. So this is similar to what the board did for Somers Commons with the speed bumps, the speed humps that were added. So I think actually, it's a good addition to the site plan, and it's respectful for the neighbors, and then again, rather than trucking material off, he's used it on site. So I have no other additional comments. I think it's a good addition to the plan.
Board member comments or questions? I'm just one of seven, but I would recommend that we waive, that we don't need a site visit, and I would waive a site plan and a public hearing.
I would agree. I would like to thank the applicant for providing documentation with the photographs and everything that clearly means we don't have to do a site visit. I really
Thank you.
thoroughness in it.
Yeah, I mean, if that's an official motion, I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Waive all of that. I don't know that route.
Is there a second? Or I guess I was.
I was.
Second.
That was your-
All in favor?
Aye.
And I would make a motion that we can ask staff to prepare a draft resolution.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you actually have a.
Oh, we have it. That's right. Sorry.
Hey, how you?
It's right
Like,
there.
remember Karnak?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay.
So,
I didn't say anything about your ear tonight. You want to go down that road?
Wasn't done yet.
what? There's a minor modification, the resolution number, because we have another resolution after this one. This should be, if you're going to proving this, we should do it chronologically, right? So this should be resolution number 2025-09.
Okay, that's what I have. This is, make a motion to approve resolution 2025-09, granting waiver of site plan application procedures and site plan amendment approval to Canida Realty, Inc. for town tax number, section 28.06, block 1, lot 15.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Luck.
Next is an informal appearance for a sketch plan review of 3 Arthur Court. The applicant is considering subdividing a property into 2 lots. Lot 1, the subdivision is to consist of approximately 5.75 acres along the eastern half of the property, which will consist of existing residents and associated site improvements to remain, with Lot 2 consisting of the remaining 4.18 acres to the west. And for the record, the property is located at 3 Arthur Court, and it's in an R40 zoning district.
Good evening, members.
Good evening.
Dan Collins, Hudson Engineering, the engineers for the project. Again, like you already mentioned, our client is looking to subdivide their property into 2 lots. The existing site is approximately a 9.93 acre lot. It's in the R40 single family, as you already mentioned. And it consists of the existing residence located about at the top of the hill here. The rest of the site as wooded. Obviously, there are some steep slopes, as you can see by the greens and the darker greens around the perimeter, essentially. Existing driveway access is approximately, the cul-de-sac is here. It extends basically along the alignment where we're proposing the road, which I'll get into shortly, which comes up and then leads to the front parking court adjacent to the building, the existing residence. So our client is obviously two lots. Lot 1 is the lot on the right. That's going to be the larger of the 2 lots with the existing residence. It's going to be approximately 5.75 acres. And it consists of the residence and the associated site improvements on this side that are existing. Lot 2 is going to be the remainder of that lot. So it's only going to be a 2-lot subdivision, even though these are way oversized properties. That'll be a new potential building footprint on that property within the flatter area, associated septic. The bigger problem here was obviously trying to get a roadway up, a driveway up there to service, try to access to both of these properties. So what we had ended up doing, we put together 2 alternatives. The first alternative, which you could see up here, provides a single driveway alignment, which follows about where the existing driveway is now. Unfortunately, the existing driveway is at about 17.5%. Since we're doing the modifications, we have to bring that within town code, which unfortunately means that we have to bring it down to 14%. In doing so, we still follow the existing alignment up. And to meet grade on either side, we have terrace retaining walls 4 foot high to keep everything tight around the driveway. The driveway is going to consist, based on our conversation with the town, of a 14-foot wide asphalt strip in the middle with 2 2-foot wides turf stone paver and permeable turf stone paver strips on either side to provide enough room for a fire truck to get up there if they need be. Once it gets to the top, after going up 14%, it splits to a single 14-foot driveway that goes back to the proposed residence on lot 2, and then another 14-foot road driveway that goes up and meets with the existing parking court. Obviously, at this point, we're preliminary, so we do show some potential locations of stormwater on the site that we are going to take into consideration. Hopefully, we can get the depth to ledge rock and groundwater. Up here, I don't think I'm going to be worried about groundwater too much. It's going to be ledge rock on top of the hills, considering we're basically almost at the ridge line. So we have a couple of spots here proposing potential infiltration / stormwater to catch whatever the existing residence has. Portion of the driveway we can catch here. Stormwater in the back, potential mitigation back here. Obviously, we have to provide septic area for the new residents. The existing residence will stay as it is. I'll just switch it out for you.
Solutions is, I think you just talked about that. This one's gonna be 10.
So this would be the alternate that would provide an individual driveway access to each lot. This is obviously not what we would want to do. For lot 2 follows the same alignment essentially that we have for the alternate 1 for the driveway alignment, follows the existing alignment up to the top, wraps around and ends up at the proposed residence on lot 2. For lot 1, unfortunately, the only area to provide that's separate would be straight through this section of steep slopes. What that does is that actually you'd end up cutting about 25 feet down into that area. You'd end up having terrace 6-foot high retaining walls on either side of that driveway going up. In order to get the 14% up to the top, we'd have to cut through the existing septic, which then we would then have to retest and relocate. And then the existing garage would end up having to come down as part of that, because we'd have to basically come through the side of that garage in order to get to the existing parking court at the top of the hill. Stormwater stays in the same locations. Luckily enough, those aren't disturbed. But this would end up looking like the Grand Canyon driving up this little path up to the top of the hill. The earthwork for this whole project, which we did preliminarily, there was about 8,800 cubic yards of material, or 8,200 cubic yards of material. For the first alternative, we were at about 3,000 yards of material coming out. So this is a considerable amount of work, considering to provide individual lines when we can do a simple combined driveway, common driveway up to the top. I guess and hand this off to you. Like, obviously, we prefer alternate one. Obviously, it keeps the disturbance tighter to the proposed common driveway, and keeps everything in where we need it to be, so that we can get up there, provide the access that we need, provide the fire access for the 2 lots, and get these lots safe and developable.
Dave and Steve, have you had enough time to look at this for any comments?
Yeah, I just have a quick, so Dan, just can you confirm for the board that both of the lots would be zoning compliant?
Yes, both lots are well oversized. In order to provide the frontage that we needed, we did have to bump out the right-of-way slightly from the end of the cul-de-sac. That ends up providing us the lot width and the lot frontage that we need for each lot. Other than that, these are well oversized. This is an R40, 40,000 square feet. Obviously, these lots are between 200.
5 and 4.
Yeah,
Well, 6.
180,000 and 250,000 square feet. So just with the slight adjustment, this area that we would be bumping out, that would end up being part of the right of way. So that would be given back to the town as part of their property.
So I think that was my concern.
Okay.
Is that these are zoning compliant lots. This is really, it comes down to more engineering. And then I think you heard some of the previous applications, if the planning board decides to forward with this application, that it would be important to coordinate with the town engineer and with the Open Space Committee and the Bureau of Fire Prevention.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. It appears you have the turning radii needed for a fire apparatus, but we've certainly seen on shared driveways in the past a request for pull-offs, or which would be difficult to accommodate in that kind of cut section.
Yes.
Is there any relocation of the building on the leftmost lot that helps with your grading, that would be able to come back down the hill a bit?
We could.
You can put the other alternate back up.
Oh yeah.
I think that.
Yeah, that's better.
Thank you for doing the evaluation, but I don't think that that's a good way to go.
Yes, I think for this lot, we can definitely shift things around to get things a little bit more,
I don't know if
straightened out.
helps you at all.
Yeah.
The other concern was the separation between the septic and your retaining wall, just to make sure that you're not too close.
Yes. Yeah. And obviously, yes, when we get into it, we're looking for.
That's detail.
Yes. Yeah. Once if you guys are okay with some, then we'll obviously move forward. We'll do our field testing for everything and get everything set up where we should 100%. Obviously, this is very preliminary. So,
So with Dave's question about the lots being kind of zoning compliant, this is, we haven't reviewed it, but a compliant, you believe this to be a compliant driveway that meets
Yes.
width and the slope requirements?
lips and the width and the slope requirements. I mean, we would love to keep it to 17.5%, but I know that's not going to happen.
Not gonna happen. Okay.
Where is,
The length of the shared portion of the driveway is roughly 200 feet?
Length is about 450, 475.
Total or the shared
The
portion?
shared portion. So the shared portion up to here is about 400 and 75 feet, and then it splits off in the either direction. And the turnaround, what we were planning on doing was this would be your Y for the fire truck. If it gets up, then it could kind of back up. I kept this radii a little wider so that it comes up and then it can back around.
Not if it gets up, when it gets.
Yes, when it gets up. That's, well, I don't want it to burn down, so I say.
Steve, were you done with the?
I am, yeah, this is an informal.
Yeah.
For the board, I think the first action is the subdivision, but then there's also the underlying site plan and all of that.
Well, could you highlight where the current driveway is, access to the existing structure?
It's right underneath where we're putting the proposed. But when it gets to this point, instead of obviously going up and around, you see these dash lines. It actually turns and there's a dash line that comes up, and that's what goes to the parking court at this point. So when we go up to the top here to bring it to 14%, this all gets taken out, puts back the grass, and then we put a new driveway up to the parking court in the front.
Understood. And then the existing garage you're going to take out?
This stuff all stays where it is.
Oh, it stays?
Yep. And this one, the other one would have to come out.
So we can give him maybe some direction as the board in approval of the first rendering that we got?
The one with the least
The one
impact?
that's up, the one that's up now,
The
yes.
Grand Canyon, yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I would,
okay.
I would say that, I mean, obviously for any one of a number of reasons.
Yeah.
it Seems the prudent way to go. The orientation currently of the garage opening is to that like turnaround area, the parking area there, is that where?
For the existing house?
Would be driving?
Yeah, so there's a garage on this side, and then there's actually also a garage as part of the main building. So
And they're gonna read that way. And the other plan, that probably would not have been,
the other plan, this detached garage would have to come down, or at least be modified by a lot.
Got it.
and just real quick, the distance from where it bifurcates in this plan up to the proposed structure is about how much?
About 200 feet? 200 feet?
That's what the guess was, yes.
Yeah.
I think we've given you a little direction.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, this is very helpful. Thank you very much. So.
It's good. Any more questions?
I guess just one last comment, kind of going back to the first application of the night where we also have a lot of rock removal and steep slope impacts that I'm sure the board's going to want to understand the construction phasing and the erosion and sediment control during construction so that we don't get partway through and have a problem.
Absolutely. Excellent. All right. Thank you guys
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very nice.
For us, we have a draft resolution for approval. It's T-Mobile application for special use permit wireless telecommunications facility. And for the record, it's at 37 Route 138, which is also known as 294 Route 100. So this will be 10, right, Dave?
Correct.
Yeah,
2025.
right, 10. Okay. Any board member comments or anything? Go ahead.
Good evening. For the record, my name is David Kenny, attorney with Snyder and Snyder. We've read a draft copy of the resolution. We have no comments or questions.
Steve or Dave?
No, the only thing I'll add is that we did have one of the resolve clauses that prior to the issuance of the building permit, you're going to have to submit this compliant RF report. It has to do with the engineer. Maybe Steve, you could summarize it. But I just want to let you know that we had this issue come up on a similar application. So when you approve the resolution, we provide a copy to the building department with a note that when they come in for a building permit, they just need to check off and make sure that condition has been responded to.
Is that's the RF engineer stamped one? Because I thought we filed that.
So the concern that we have with the stamped RF report is that while the engineer individually is licensed in New York State, the engineer is not stamping it as an individual. They're stamping it under an LLC, which does not have a certificate of authorization to practice engineering in New York. It's the wrong legal entity of structure to practice engineering or to provide engineering services in New York, is my understanding of the education law. And we've seen with prior applications, reports from the same entity with the same engineer, and they've been otherwise modified, and I can talk to you about what that is offline, to have been, instead of being stamped by this entity, by a different entity that has a certificate of authorization. So we are comfortable. I'm not questioning the quality of engineering that was done or the engineering analysis that was done, or that this engineer has a license issued by New York State, is licensed and registered, but they are stamping not as an individual, but as an LLC that does not have a certificate of authorization to practice engineering in the state of New York. We rely on that certificate and that engineer's analysis as a board. And so it's great that they're a New York engineer, but they can't practice engineering in New York under that LLC, is our understanding. Welcome to be corrected on it or provided additional documentation, but that entity is not listed in my search of the New York State Education Department's Office of the Professions listing of entities that have a certificate to practice engineering in New York State.
Okay, I think we've dealt with this before. We can have it reissued in that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, you comfortable with that?
Okay, sure.
Board member comments or concerns?
Well,
Okay, then I make a motion, we accept resolution number 2025-10, granting of conditional amended site special permit approval, amended site plan approval to T-Mobile Northeast LLC, T-Mobile for modification and upgrade of existing approved T-Mobile wireless facility. Excuse me, for the record, it's at 37 Route 138 or 294 Route 100, town tax number, section 28-11, block 1, lot 1.1.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too. Last but not least, Trailside Estates at Somers site plan application and preliminary subdivision application up on Reynolds Drive. For the record, the applicant is proposing construction of an 81-unit townhouse community with associated appendages, 5 of them 81 units, that'll be sponsor provided and target households at or below the 120% AMI. The project also proposes the construction of a community center and dog park to be located on a separate parcel, which will be dedicated to the town of Somers. And it's accessed through Somers Realty Plan Hamlet via Reynolds Drive, and it's in an MFR-BP zoning district. Good evening.
So good evening. For your record, Rich Williams with Insight Engineering. First of all, thank you for accommodating my request to be moved down on the agenda. I had a conflict, so appreciated. And second of all, Ken and Sean Carney, the owners of the project property and developers of the project, both wanted me to offer their apologies. They had an event tonight, so they couldn't be here in person, which they both wanted. So they just asked that I extend their apology to the board. Since we were last before you, we have made a resubmission responding to the comments from town planner, town engineer, and the open space committee. I will run through those briefly, and then really I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Ultimately, our next step in the process with you is to schedule a public hearing. I know we still have some water and sewer comments to resolve. I've been in touch with the town engineer on that. So I guess what we can and can't do tonight, but as far as what we did in our resubmission, we confirmed all the plantings that we're proposing are native species and they're non-invasive, which is standard for what we do in site design now. We added details on the proposed wetland mitigation plan, where the mitigation would be located, species, quantities, which is down in this area. And again, that wetland mitigation is being provided in support of the proposed wetland buffer disturbance for the stormwater pond, which we talked about during the site walk and we've talked about previously in front of this board. We provided the updated community center layout. This was something that we talked about at the last meeting that we were going to do. And just to walk the board through what we did, the community center was previously located in this portion of the property, and it was running parallel to the bike trail, which runs here north-south. We rotated it 90 degrees so that when you enter, you come through the parking lot, making for a little bit better flow. It also added, we added additional parking, which was one of the comments. We're up to 60 spaces. And again, we're happy to talk about the town or talk to the town about whether or not that's the right number. The reason why we rotated the community center is we are proposing a 5,867 square foot community center. I have the plans below me. It's got the ability, and I can, if the board wants, I'll walk you through what the community center has in the plans. But they were included in part of your submission package. But basically, it's a 50. Yeah, I'll just get you the dimension. $50 by $90 footprint with a mezzanine level. So on the main floor, you'll have 2 basketball hoops and a small indoor court. It's not full-size regulation, but that court can also be converted into 2 pickleball courts. And then you'll have a mezzanine level with additional storage and a meeting room and additional space. On the first floor underneath the mezzanine or upper deck, there'll be 2 locker rooms. The idea being this can be an auxiliary space to rent out for youth sports, younger basketball programs, things like that. One of the things that we had talked about with the town board was making a footprint that was expandable. By rotating the building 90 degrees and putting it on this portion of the property a little flatter, we offer the opportunity to expand the building in either direction in the future if you want to add additional court space or enlarge one of the courts. The other thing we did was that allowed us to make a little bit better connection into the dog park area, which is shown here on the drawing. And we added a little bit more detail and talked about the dog park a little bit more, in as much as the idea is not to clear all the trees, but maybe do some select clearing when the dog park area, add some benches. Again, the final programming is something we're willing to work with Park and Rec in the town on. The other thing we added a sidewalk connection down Reynolds Drive. This was something we told you we were going to do at the last meeting, but we hadn't gotten on the drawings yet. We now have that sidewalk connection, which runs down Reynolds Drive and connects into the sidewalk network on the planned hamlet. So we think it's important to have pedestrian connectivity to the planned hamlet. There are a lot of sidewalks in the planned hamlet that then connect into the shopping center. So we see this as just a nice network of continuing sidewalks and making more walkable communities. We provided all of the applications. Again, what we're before you for is for subdivision, site plan, steep slope, stormwater management, erosion sediment control, and tree removal. You actually have all those applications filed. We provided a draft notice of intent under the state stormwater permit and an MS4 SWIP acceptance form. We responded to a number of the technical comments from the town engineer. I won't go through them all. We added in on drawing EX1, which is our existing conditions plan, a summary of the historical land types. So this is a 56.8 acre piece of property. It's a large property. We're disturbing approximately half of it. We haven't done an individual tree survey, but what we did do for purposes of seeker was we went out and we took sample tree sizes throughout the entire property based on historical land uses. So for instance, this portion of the property used to be all apple orchards. And if you go to the historical aerials, you can see it clearly in a lot, and on our survey, you'll see, where the tree lines are and where the old trails are. There was areas down in here which were never cleared. And then there's areas which on the upper portion of the property were cleared for meadow, and you can see that secondary growth that's come back in. We went to each of those land areas and took multiple samples to come up with an estimated tree per acre and then an estimated tree removal for seeker. And it was something that we didn't do independent of the town. We talked to them about how we would do this analysis. We added those land areas in response to a comment from the town engineer regarding whether or not that would be sufficient as opposed to doing a full tree survey. And then when we finally get to the point of pulling the actual tree permit from the engineering, we could coordinate with Steve to do the tree counts for the establishment of the fee, which is how we'd like to proceed. So we provided that additional detail to further support the tree numbers that we've provided to date. As I mentioned, we've reached out to the town water and sewer department just to get some additional information on hydrant flow tests, utilization of the Somers Realty pump station, sewer pump station, so that we can finalize our water and sewer reports. And I think that, and there's a handful of comments we got from Woodard and Curran, which we're working on addressing. So, that being said, happy to answer questions on what we've provided.
Rich, just I had a quick conversation with the building inspector, who's also associated with the Bureau of Fire Prevention. And at some point, the discussion may come up about when that access, the emergency access gets incorporated. I think you had it as part of Phase 6.
Correct.
They may have a comment as part of the formal review when we get to the public hearing about moving that up to an earlier phase, just to give you a heads up that that may be coming down the road.
Okay.
And the other issue was, and this is kind of a timing issue of having a community benefits agreement in place as to when, for instance, when the community center comes online as part of the phasing. So I would think that your client should be considering having something drafted and reviewed by the town as part of this process. And other than that, they've adequately responded to the comments that we've raised. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think we can be flexible as to when we do make that connection for the fire department. The main thing that we would look to do is, again, we have to make sure we have units up, and there's actually we're worried about protecting. And we have to marry that with where the earthwork is. So as we're building our way into the site, we want to make sure that we're not duplicating work or duplicating efforts. Just need to make sure the mass earthwork is in place so that we can actually make that connection. But as far as just coming through and connecting, I think that flexible on that.
I have a question. I'm sorry. There's another subdivision that's in front of us, and so I'm getting a lot of the details confused. How are we handling the septic? Was this a tie-in to one of the sewer districts for this?
Yes.
Okay. And was that Yorktown? No, who?
Peekskill.
Peekskill.
Peekskill, right.
Okay. All right. Got it. I'm sorry. It's just.
And water too from them?
So water
Or water Somers?
from town of Somers.
Okay.
And then with respect to the Peekskill Sanitary Sewer District and the district tie-in, the town board has approved us to be in the water and sewer district. And we actually have received, since we've been before you last, a will serve letter from Westchester County indicating they will serve this project. So
I was curious about the dog park. Is it big enough to segregate, kind of like we do here at the one for small, medium, and large dogs, or is it going to be one big dog park? And the only reason I ask is I don't have a dog anymore, but I know it's important to some people because they want the little dogs with themselves so the big dogs don't attack them.
I will check with Ken and Sean, but I can hear Ken saying yes and Sean looking at Ken. So
I also, just as a comment, I think it's a good idea to not clear cut.
Yeah.
I never understood that
Yeah.
dogs love trees, and the creatures that reside in them. So I don't know. I think it's a good idea to be selective and leave some up there.
Either that or we have to
Right.
put 3 different sized fake fire hydrants.
Fire hydrant.
Right, exactly. Trees. So
I often think of Sycamore Park has a very nice dog park, and they actually built it into the woods. You know, and didn't clear cut the woods, but you know, put surfacing down. Yeah.
yeah, I think you can out without it just being an open field.
Right.
You know, so.
So from from the engineering perspective, obviously the capacity assessments for water and sewer require some additional information, and I've been in touch with the water and sewer superintendent to work with them to make sure that the town's providing the requested information to the applicant. I think the methodology for assessing tree impacts for the purposes of seeker is reasonable and appropriate for this kind of site. For smaller sites, we do request a tree survey where it's feasible. In this location, it's, I think, a significant expense, and the town and the public can understand the extent of the impacts with the methodology that's proposed. And there's no impact in terms of revenue to the town, since the applicant is proposing to actually count the trees that they cut. Can you address, you talked about the sidewalks. Are there sidewalks through the development, or it's really starts at that point where it is the higher traffic driveway area as opposed to through the development?
So right now, we do have a sidewalk that goes through the development. It's only proposed on one side of the road. It's proposed on the lower side of the road or the eastern side, just because there's more units on that side. So if you live in one of these units or one of the smaller offshoots, you would have to walk across the street to get to the sidewalk, and then you'd be on the sidewalk network.
The sidewalk where it comes back out to the planned hamlet is on which side of the driveway? It still stays on that,
It's
the same side as it were, or is it crossover?
It stays on the northern side,
Okay.
and then it crosses back over when we get down near the green area.
Are there any historic land uses that give you concern over hazardous materials on the site? It's not a site where there's been dumping, obviously. We didn't see any during the site walk, but
You said it was like agricultural, my orchards and meadows and stuff,
Um,
as far as you know?
there was an apple orchard here that showed up on the old historic aerials. You know, a lot of this area was farmed in orchards at one point. Growing up in the area, I know my brother-in-law and others used to use that as quad trails. There's a lot of remaining trails that still run through that property. But yeah, that's what we know. Got it.
Would you mind just putting up the plan for the center?
while Rich is doing that, we did have the applicant did respond to most of our prior comments, and we had comments on some of their updated materials or some clarification on in some areas, making sure that stormwater treatment areas are going to remain accessible for future maintenance. So we do have some open comments there, but they're likely to be addressed.
Rick, this might be a minor question, but with regard to the pickleball court versus basketball, my understanding that the basketball the backboard is on the, I guess would be the east side of that building.
So I'm gonna come around to keep the
South is.
keep the mic close. So the parking lot, you're driving site, so the rear of the building, you're facing north when you pull into the front of the building or the side of the building, which is here. So the parking lot sits down in this portion of the site. When you walk in, you'll be in the main gymnasium area. There's a basketball hoop here and a basketball hoop here, and you can see the striping for the two pickleball courts.
You have a fence. You have a fence between the two courts. Dotted line on the court on this drawing.
I don't know the answer to that. I can ask the architect how they do that, whether or not there's a temporary fencing they bring in, or how they do that to keep the space so it can still be activated into the courts. I don't know if it's permanent, a screen divider that's pulled. I don't know that we've gotten into that level of detail yet.
Okay, because it's important that the courts be separate enough, because nobody ever goes deep in a pickleball court, but they do go sideways. And also your question about putting up permanent net posts might, I assume that in order to do that, you'd have to have temporary posts, because you couldn't play basketball with posts in the middle of the courts.
Exactly.
The ones that I've seen indoor, they just roll the nets out and then roll them back
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
For pickleball.
for pickleball, right? And then when they roll back, obviously the basketball court is exposed to play basketball.
Right. Yeah, and then the markings.
The markings are already there,
Tend to,
right?
right, delineate what's pickleball and what's.
Right.
So.
Because they go perpendicular to each other.
And then so when you come in, you'll have a staircase that takes you up to the mezzanine level. You'll also have an elevator, obviously, so everything is accessible. When you come into here, there's an additional bridge area, and then you enter the 2 locker room areas. You have one door here, one door here. On the mezzanine level, when you come up, you enter a conference room, additional storage closet, and then mechanical spaces.
And then the intent is that town will manage the structure, the building as a community center?
So the town is, so we're gonna locate the community center on its own property and then dedicate it to the town.
Got it.
So it will be the town's.
So if we chose to make this an alternate cooling center, like we do at Heritage, right? Don't you guys have a cooling center up there for the summertime in the center there? Open for residents when we have heat waves and power outages and whatnot?
Correct.
So.
You could do that there.
Town could
Yeah.
utilize, right? Yeah. It'll be air conditioned?
Yes.
Will it have a generator?
I was gonna say, yeah.
I don't know yet. I don't know that we've gotten to that level of
I
detail.
would think that, if we're going to use it for shelter of any kind, that you have to have it.
Spending Ken's money. He should have been here.
I'm just making a list.
I have a question. Remember that application Green Tree?
Yes.
Yeah.
And, the complicating factors was access to it was contemplated to cross the trail way, which was difficult,
Mhm.
certainly on a Saturday morning. And the applicant had, said that they would allow that application, the Green Tree application, were to move forward to join up, and then that those properties could access roads, you could exit the property, the Green Tree through this development. Has any discussions occurred with Green Tree? Would this finish and then Green Tree could come back or not? Or I just,
Well, Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Ken and you have accommodated a potential access way to Green Tree if they,
Yes,
That's
they
correct.
have. If they have.
if they
So it-
decide to come forward.
it exists,
Hmm.
it exists on the plans.
Yes.
And so let's just timeline, this application moves forward, gets approved, and that is locked down and it's available. So whenever the development of Green Tree, because this is the second time I've seen Green Tree in my time on the board. I saw it in an earlier iteration as well. So at whatever point in time, whatever owner comes, it exists. That's what I just wanted to make sure that it will be there. Because every time you look at Green Tree with that crossing,
Well,
Check.
you've accommodated a potential access.
access.
Yeah, I'm gonna be very clear
Sure.
on this. So we committed to being able to work with our neighbors if the board wanted.
Yeah.
We said in our design, we would leave enough room for an access. There were preliminary conversations with the neighbor. They ceased.
Okay.
We have not allotted a future easement connection. We have incorporated an opening sign because again, their application was pending and active at the time. And we said we would, at the board's request, it was you guys coming to us and saying, you be willing to work with the neighbor. And we had reached out, again, my understanding is the conversation stopped. But we, in honoring our commitment to you, did leave an opening between the buildings at a grade and elevation where an extension could happen.
Okay. I just wanted to understand where it was left and where we.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
I don't know if it's a fair legal question to ask, but do they have to incorporate an easement now, or can you do an easement later after a project is completed?
They could issue an easement later. The easement is a negotiation between the.
You can do it anytime.
Is granting access. It's what's
Okay.
not to the board's it accommodates the access. in the
Okay.
Actual site plan.
And then which applicant would then present to us the plan for the connection? That would be Green Tree then?
Oh, that's a good question. So if they're applying, because Green Tree predates my
Right,
Correct.
Yeah,
participating in the board.
it would be Green Tree.
be Green Tree.
It would have
Yeah, because they're going to benefit.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
They're going to benefit.
portion of their application.
So
Yeah.
we were
And,
talking
and
about,
they would be approaching at that point, the HOA? Or, but how,
Yeah, right.
but yeah,
To negotiate the easement,
yeah.
whoever owns the property or exerts title over the property would
you were talking
the
about,
other party. Depending on whether or not the developer chose to do so prior to transferring ownership of the HOA.
Okay.
Depends on who owns the actual property.
Timing, that's what I'm trying to figure out, timing and eventuality. It's an imponderable I'm asking.
There's a lot of moving parts going on.
I realize that as I'm asking. Thank you.
I would have to assume the Green Tree is paying attention to all this, so they, it's just,
I'm
They
aware, I can't assume.
if they want, now's the time to act. But
The town and particularly your board did an extensive review of the
Right.
Green Tree application. And I think that you've attempted to accommodate, the eventuality of coming out onto this particular property.
correct, right,
But it's up to Green Tree.
right.
so if in selling those units that are near that easement, is there any necessity for you to bring that up with the sale of those units? There's an easement, there's a potential easement through that property.
So right now on the drawing, there is not an easement. It is not part of our plan. So as your attorney pointed out to you, depending on who is in charge of the HOA at the time, right? So when you come in as a developer and you build a homeowners association, it doesn't instantly get turned over. It takes years and years and years to ultimately, turn over a homeowners association. So, we have a long window right now.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's just that we're interested to make sure that whatever kind of handshake agreement survives the transfer of ownership from the developer to the homeowners association. Otherwise, the whole thing could be moot if they decide not to preserve that option there.
Which is why I think it behooves Green Tree to,
Speak up now.
yeah, there you go. Thank you. I was trying to find the right.
I don't want to say forever hold your peace, but speak up now.
But that is unrelated, but
Right.
related to this plan, right? So
I remember
they've done a good faith effort,
we've asked from the get-go and.
100%.
Yep,
accommodated, and you guys still are.
Yep.
We're just waiting on the other applicant to figure out what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that would, I think where it's at.
any other questions? Comments?
So
Thank you, Rich.
we'll respond to Steve's comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back. Thank you.
For the record, our next meeting is June 11th, 2025. Any other closing comments or questions from the board?
Our next, we're going to have a site walk on 14th.
Oh, that's right.
That's right, yeah.
Right,
Thank you.
which is after that, actually.
Yep.
It's the next big
That's okay.
pending thing we do have out there.
Nicole will send something out to people like me that forget things, so don't worry.
Flag Day.
On
Flag Day.
Well, where am I flag?
Gonna park in the church parking lot.
Yes, right. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Off.